Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast, sponsored by the IBCA. We are a global podcast that shares the passion for the coaching profession. You will hear the stories of coaches from all around the world. We are covering the profession in game, outside of the game, and anything in between. As always, thank you for listening. We look forward to sharing the coaches' stories with you. All right, on today's episode of the After the Timeout podcast, we have a very special guest. We have Eric Michaelsen, principal at Lemont High School. Coach, good morning, and how are you today?
Yeah, good morning to you guys. Doing great, thank you.
So we usually call our segment, as we speak to a lot of basketball coaches, the opening tip. But as we speak to some football coaches, we've kind of changed it to the opening kick. So kind of first, if you just want to walk our listeners through like your journey, it's a very unique journey. You've had an abundance of roles at a variety of schools, obviously the last many years at Lemont. But if you just want to take our listeners kind of through your journey, how it started and how you got to where you are.
Sure. Lamont's the third school that I was at. I've been there now for 26 or 27 years. I started off teaching at a Lutheran school in Detroit. I was a social studies teacher, and then I became a teacher and a guidance counselor. Then I went to Walther Lutheran, which is in the Melrose Park, Maywood area. At which point in time, I was a teacher in addition to a dean and a counselor as well. And then I came to Lemont, and I started off as a teacher, became a dean, became a counselor, became the director of guidance, and then I became the principal 10, 11 years ago.
Got a ton of backgrounds and experiences. So we wanted to kind of start first with the football aspect of it. Your first 2 years, you're 4 and 5, and then 4 years later, you're back-to-back championship games. So maybe tell us a little bit about the process of how you kind of built that and got to those back-to-back championship games.
Sure. No, became the head football coach. The program we had a couple of so-so seasons before. So when I took over, we really focused on the process. And I know that can sound like a cliche, but it's really true. The process for us was to get buy-in from the athletes. And that buy-in included getting them to work hard in the off season. We wanted them to get bigger, faster, and stronger for us to compete with the teams we were going to be playing against. Another big part of the aspect for us is we had to keep Lemont kids in Lemont. We had been losing them to go to parochial schools, so we worked really hard at that. And then football-wise, once we got playing, and you hear this, I heard when they're talking about the Bears, you have to learn to not beat yourselves before you can beat others, and that's just so true. There were several games prior to that we could potentially made it to the playoffs in those first couple of years, but we would do things that we would end up shooting ourselves in the foot. So the constant was the working hard, not only the players, but the coaches as well. And we really focused on the process, not the prize. Kept trying to make sure that the kids and the coaches understood that if we do the right things, the wins are going to take care of themselves, as opposed to if you're sitting there and you're worried and you're nervous about wins and losses all the time, that can cause everybody to get a little bit of stress. Then we got some big wins. We beat some teams that we maybe shouldn't have, and people started to believe. And football's always been kind of a big deal in Lemont, but when you're winning in Lemont, football becomes a huge thing. And then we had kids that wanted to come to Lemont. We had kids that moved into Lemont to play football.
So you talked about learning how to win, and you said those big wins kind of helped you believe, but what else went into that, right? Was it, going back and some film, or just was it the experiences, having those kids experience it and have success in those situations that kind of gave them the belief to, hey, now we can do this, where sometimes it gets to, oh, we've lost for a lot of years and here we go again.
Yeah, and I think that's where the winning some big games and being able to actually show the kids, hey, we did X, Y, and Z, and this is how it applied itself to the field. You guys hung together. You didn't hang your head. You didn't have a mistake and then dwell on that mistake and turn one mistake into two or three. The things that you preach about as a coach really can come true. And when that happens, you show the kids that. And then they believe. And then football becomes not a thing where we're begging kids to play, but we then started to have more and more kids that wanted to play. We had kids that maybe played Little League football that didn't want to play in high school, that now they wanted to continue to play. And all of that went into the program when the program is successful. And that's what sometimes the kids see. But the other part of it is we really wanted to make it a program that had a family atmosphere where the kids were looking out for each other, where the coaches were looking out for the kids, and that hard work. It's pretty cool when you're in the weight room and you're working out with your brother, which is what the players on the team looks at themselves like. So you don't want to let that person down. That's when you have something special.
We've talked to a couple guests, and there's a great book that kind of talks about like the imposter syndrome as a coach. And those first couple of years, I know I at least experienced it a little bit. I know some coaches I've talked to experience it. Those first couple of years as you're coming close, but you're not making the playoffs. Did you ever have that self-doubt at all, within yourself? Maybe you didn't share it with your assistants. You definitely didn't share it with the kids, but did you ever have those moments where you're like, man, am I doing the right things? Are we on the right track? Is this going the right way?
1,000%. Especially in those first couple of years, we would play Morris, and Morris at that time and they're still an amazing program, and they were in our conference, and we went there thinking that we had really taken a step up, and this was going to be our chance to show how good we are, and we just got spanked. And I can remember on the bus ride home, it wasn't anything that the kids had done. We were out coached, we were out physical, and it was just sitting there on the bus with my assistants, just talking about, holy smokes, are we ever going to be able to play football at this level? I mean, we should be able to. What is it that we're not doing? So what we did is we started talking to some coaches in the area. We talked to John Belskis at Downers Grove South, who was a bigger program than us, and just sort of listened to him and ask questions and pick his brains. And he was so open. And that's what I found is if you want to, there's just a bunch of coaches that are willing to listen and to give you advice and to help you out. And that was definitely beneficial when you start to doubt, because I think if you don't doubt, you're either super special as a human being or you're not human.
So let's kind of tweak it and build off of this. So now you start to sustain the success, because I think this is the opposite challenge coaches face. I think you have the beginning challenge of establishing yourself, but now you've started to sustain that success. And you talked about they're in the weight room and they don't want to let each other down. But how do you also prevent against that falling off, or that like, hey, I have Lemont on my shirt, so that's automatically means that I'm good now. How did you guys as a staff, you as a head coach, kind of go about sustaining that success? Because with any human nature, kind of that fall off kind of sets in, like, well, maybe I don't have to do those extra reps because we're already good.
Oh, for sure. And I agree with you. I would argue that sustaining success can be more difficult than getting there. Because with success, you hit you hit right on the button. You become a bigger target. For us, it became that each school on our schedule would circle us on their calendar, and you have to keep your players grounded, because the players start to think that they're amazing. Your coaches need to remember the work necessary to get to the top, because I think sometimes what ends up happening is your coaches, who are awesome people who work hard, but they start to think that they've invented the game as well. I think it's human nature. So you need to remind the coaches the work necessary to get to the top. and you need to find ways to keep improving, because I would always preach that if we're not getting better, we're getting worse. And the teams that we were playing are doing everything they could to get better. So I would use examples of if kids weren't in the weight room, if they missed a workout for a reason that wasn't super legitimate, then I'd bring the kids together and say, I can tell you what, Richards High School kids, they're not missing. The Oak Forest kids, they're not missing. You guys need to understand that just because that we beat them last year, we had 18 seniors that aren't here anymore. Brand new team. If you think you're going to just step on the field and because it says Lemont on your jersey, that teams are going to go, oh no, it's Lemont. You've got another thing coming. And that was a part of our process all the time, was to try to keep the kids grounded. And as coaches, I would make sure that the coaches had time for professional development, to go to clinics, to go to meet with other coaches, to do those types of things, to learn the game and how to teach the game, to get even better.
So I think just interesting follow is one of those things is, we're at a place for a long time as a head coach. I myself will be in my 8th year coming up, 8th or 9th year. I don't even remember at this point, but, when you're there for a while and you get the kids to buy in and you work with the parents, how did you get maybe the broader community to buy in? And, we have a lot of young head coaches that listen, or assistants that want to be head coaches that listen to our show. Maybe how did you get the next ring, the school administration, the community as a whole, to kind of now start to buy into your program? Because Lemont from the outside seems like a very special place in that way.
Yeah, and it is, and it's a tremendous community. The administration was always in our corner. The administration felt that a successful football program is going to help other programs to succeed, and to help the beginning of the school year, just to have the kids being excited about something. So always had the administration support. The community support, like I said, football is super important in Lemont, which can be a double-edged sword. So things that we would do is to get our kids and our coaches out into the community, as far as we would have coaches, a coaches meeting for like the grade school coaches. And we don't have grade school football, but we have like youth football. So we would have like a coaches clinic for the youth coaches. We would invite those guys who tend to have a lot of influence. We would invite those guys to come to school and have our coaches do some coaching up with them. We would invite those coaches, to come to our practice to watch how we practice, to show the drills that we use, and how do we teach tackling, how do we teach blocking. And that, I think, was a big part of it. We would have parent meetings at several different points throughout the year, because communication is super important. If you expect to have the kids there in the summer, you need to make sure that the parents know when it is that is the best time for them to take a vacation. So we would have several different parent meetings throughout the year, and then meetings with the youth football coaches, and that helped. I believe that helped with the community and the people in that had the most influence on what was going on in the community.
So you kind of, I'm going to tweak this next question, because you talked about your community, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, kind of, if you look today, there's a lot of changes. Coaches going here, coaches going there, admin changing, right? There seems to be, everywhere you go, you look, there's changes every year. So in your situation, kind of what led to you being at Lemont for so long? What kept you there? What drew you there? Obviously, you've had multiple different roles and different challenges there, but kind of what was that draw within that Lemont community that kind of kept you there? What's so special about it?
Sure, and for me, I was born and raised in Lemont. So that meant that I went to grade school in Lemont. I went to high school in Lemont. I played football and baseball in Lemont. We were part of the first Lemont team to ever make the playoffs. My grandparents graduated from Lemont. My mom graduated from Lemont. I have 3 daughters. They graduated from Lemont. I have 3 grandchildren. I think they're going to graduate from Lemont. So it's a special community, and it's the community that I grew up on. And it is really, it's a diamond in the rough. It's a special place. It's a fantastic place to raise kids. But if you're going to be in a position that is visual, head football coach, for example, it can have its drawbacks as well. Because when you go to the store, there's people there that are going to kind of know who you are, and they might want to tell you, hey, in the nicest way possible, hey, dummy, why didn't you go for it on 4th and 3? Or what were you thinking? Why did you punt? And that can be a difficult thing because not everybody has the skill set to say things like that in a nice way. And you just sort of have to understand that with the incredible positives and an awesome place to raise your family, if you're going to work in the community, there's going to be a few times that you're going to be in an uncomfortable spot.
So, as we kind of transition away from the football piece of it, you went from coaching for a long time into an admin role. And I think that's more unique as we go. I could make a joke and say, I guess you weren't visible enough as the football coach that you wanted to maybe be principal and be more visible. But, maybe things you recommend to others as they're looking for the next challenge after coaching. I think there's a lot of coaches out there that can't imagine themselves. You mean you want me to step away from coaching? What else do I do? And I'm sure there's lots of times where you're at a football game and you miss it, or you're in August at a doubles practice and you miss it, but maybe things you recommend to others that are looking for that next challenge after coaching.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it depends on the person, because administration isn't for everyone. I think that there are, some of my colleagues, some of my friends that are at the high school, and they do an awesome job in the classroom, but I don't know that they would be teachers if they weren't able to be coaches. So there's that kind of person who loves the sport and loves that part of it so much. And those people should probably continue to do that because they're really good at what they do. For me, it just became a situation where I started to take a look at the combination of my age and my experience, and the fact that maybe I might want to have a different challenge or a bigger challenge for me. So we had a principal, Dr. Trengrove. He was a great guy. He'd been there for a long time. He was retiring. And I felt that Lemont was a super special place, but I was worried what was going to happen and who were they going to bring in, and would that change the culture? Would that change the way things are at Lemont High School? So arrogantly, I felt that maybe I could step into that role and keep Lemont special, keep that Lemont doing things the way that we do it. I knew it was going to be a challenge. I knew it was going to be a huge change for me and my family. But I also knew that it was one of those perfect situations that if I didn't get it, I was still going to do a job that I loved, to be the head football coach and director of guidance. So it was almost like a no-lose situation for me. And really deep down, probably a surprise that I got it, because as I was going through it, I just kept waiting for them to go and to say, hey, Eric, thanks, but we're going in a different direction with this particular position.
All right, so let's go. We call this halftime adjustments. We're gonna go full football here. Yesterday, me and John had a roundtable with basketball coaches. We talked about basketball special situations, right? So I'm going to give you an example. I'm a Miami Hurricanes fan. I don't know if you saw what happened in the game yesterday at all.
But I saw that didn't go well.
Right. So again, there's lots of factors that go into it. But, for our listeners, Miami had the ball. The other Georgia Tech had no timeouts, 36 seconds left. All they had to do was kneel. They decided to run the ball, turnover, Georgia Tech wins. But what in the preparation for games and your season, and like, what did you guys do to prepare for those situations, knowing what decision to make? Thinking that through to be ready. Because I mean, we talked yesterday in this, there's so many different situations that could come up. It's hard to prepare for all of them. But how did you guys kind of think about those things, maybe before a game or heading into the season, to where if that situation came up, this is what we're going to do?
Well, I think one of the things that we would do is we would make a list of different types of situations, and then we would actually go out there and we would practice those different types of things. And in Illinois, you get the IHSA summer days that you're able to use. And we would use those days to really practice the situations that probably during the season you're either not going to have enough time to practice or work on. So we would try and find times to work on those things in the summer, whether it was, what are we going to work on for a 2-point conversion? What are we going to work on? All right, here's the situation. There's 80 seconds left and you have no timeouts and we need to get a field goal. Here's the situation. There's 2 minutes left. We're up by 2 points and we have the ball. What is it that we're going to do? So we would work on those types of scenarios or situations quite often. And that doesn't mean that when you get in the heat of the battle, you're not going to make a mistake. I can recall one time in the semifinals, we were playing Crete-Moni. They had a 1-point lead. We had the ball with about 3.5 minutes to go at about our 35 or so. And it was 4th and 10. And I decided to punt the ball and play defense and get the ball back and save my timeouts on defense. And we never got the ball back. So not that I still focus on those types of things, but that was probably not what I would call coaching brilliance looking back at it. Should have went for it and realized that my kids were gassed on the defensive side and go for it and see what happens.
So I'm going to add to that a little bit then, like as a head coach, right? I mean, Coach Cristobal is getting roasted a little bit right now, but like you said, you make decisions in the moment. I'm sure he believed in his players to execute what he wanted to execute, hold on to the ball, game's over, right? But how do you use your assistants for that, right? Because you could be over here talking to this person or the defense or the offense or whatever, or trying to figure something out. So how are you using your assistants to be like, hey, coach, we should kneel, or we should, we talked about this, getting in your ear to kind of help you, remind you maybe when you're in that moment of trying to figure everything.
Sure. And I think part of that is something that goes into that moment, and that's the relationships that you build with the coaches. For me, I always wanted my coaches to feel comfortable enough to tell me what they were thinking. My coaches always had the opportunity to disagree with me. Generally, I preferred that to be behind closed doors. But you need to have a culture that somebody's not afraid to come up to you and go, hey, Eric, hey, we should go for it here. Hey, Eric, and that kind of relationship building is super important, because you want to get the input. Because I was blessed with my coaches. They wanted to win every bit as much as I did, and they wanted to have success every bit as much. They loved the kids every bit as much as me. It was really a team-wide coaching staff where we worked together. But for that specific instance, I went and asked the defensive coordinator, hey, if I punt here, you going to stop him? And he was like, oh, yeah, for sure. So next season, I didn't ask him all the time. You know what I'm saying? I'm just teasing. But that's kind of, I think it's the culture of the organization that helps to make sure that people have confidence that they can disagree with a decision maker and not be chastised or removed or anything like that.
So as we get into the second half of the episode, with each guest, we like to focus on a topic. And for you, we felt that the topic of leadership, and yes, it's a very big topic, but the topic of leadership in schools in a variety of roles would obviously be something that would be very interesting to our guests. So we're going to dig into, for all of our listeners, to just different leadership roles and maybe keys to being an effective leader. So with that being said, let's start with our favorite topic, which is talking about working with parents. You know, you've worked with parents in a variety of roles, whether it's head football coach, dean of students, head of guidance, being now the principal of the school. You know, those are all very different roles to work with parents. What do you feel like for educators out there, administrators out there, coaches out there, has been some of your keys to success in working with parents to develop those relationships?
I think probably it always helps me to remember that the most important thing in the parent's life is their children. It's their child. And that means sometimes they're going to have a skewed perspective about what's going on. But if you can keep that in the back of your mind, it kind of takes away a little bit of the angst that you might feel when a parent comes into a situation hot or upset about something. It always helps me to realize that the reason that they're feeling this way is because they feel in some way, shape, or form that their child has been wronged, either by a decision that you've made or by something that's happened with another child, whatever the situation is. So I think first and foremost, that helps me to understand where they're coming from. And I think the other part of it is for me to always, when I'm dealing with a parent, to make sure that they feel that I'm listening to them. So specific to your question in regards to, dealing with parents, that's been a couple of things that I've always done. I try not to go into the situation hot. I try to give myself some time to think about it. And I'm talking about, bad situations or tough situations. Other than that, when you're dealing with parents, it's basically to listen and to, get them to know who you are and to build trust so that they believe that what you're doing is what's going to turn out to be what's best for their kid. And, that takes a little bit of time for that to happen. And sometimes by the time you build the trust, the darn kid graduates and they're moving on to college, but you've at least had that experience with a parent where they can't go around town saying, Michaelsen's a jerk who doesn't listen, or he's disrespectful, or those different types of things. They still might have disagreements with me, but it's not going to be, they can't really fairly say those things.
So what traits as a coach did you take into being a principal? And I'm sure you tweaked it here, changed it a little bit, but what traits did you take that helped you in that principal role?
Yeah, I think there's a ton of similarities, or at least how I do the principal role is very similar to how I did the head coaching role. It's both dependent on relationships. To be successful in both, I think you have to be able to work with people and collaborate with people. I think you have to have a strong work ethic. If you're not willing to put in the time as a head coach, I don't know that you're going to be a super successful head coach. And it's the same way if you're going to be a principal. If you're not willing to put in the time and be one of the first people there and one of the last people to leave, I don't know that you're going to be a strong principal. I think you have to be organized for both. So organization is super helpful. I think you have to have a plan. I think for both, you have to have a vision. If you don't have a vision of what success looks like as a leader, I don't know that you necessarily know what you're striving for. You have to, like I say, you have to work well with others, collaborate, listen. You have to make decisions, and you have to realize that in this day and age, when you make a decision, it's going to be impossible to get everybody to be 100% in agreement. And you have to just make decisions that are based firmly on what your belief system is. And for me, it's making decisions that are what's best for the kids. So in both positions, as a head coach and as principal, you're in a position to help others. I can remember working with my assistant coaches. Now I work with uh, my assistant principal, the different directors of various areas of the school, and mostly working with the teachers to make sure that they feel supported and they can do the job that they have, which the most important job in the school, in my opinion, is for our students to get a quality education so that they're able to go out and become members of society that can benefit society. So it's very similar to me. The head coach and principal is very, very similar.
So, when you are the first person in and the last person to leave, and you do dedicate all that time, obviously, you were a father and a husband. How did you find that balance to, still be there for those kids' events and still, have time to spend with your wife? I was listening to a Head Coach another podcast yesterday hosted by Bronco Mendenhall, a college football coach. And one of the coaches on there was, he said, every Tuesday, my wife and I decided we would have lunch for 1 hour. And that was our time. We knew that was our hour for the week. So how do you still, as the head football coach or the dean or the principal, how do you find that time for your family as well?
And I'm still trying to figure that out. Probably a thing that I do pretty poorly, but I think the important part of that is to find a partner who understands. And you can't, in my opinion, you can't be a head football coach, you can't be a principal unless you have an amazing spouse who is going to be understanding and going to be willing to share you and going to be not holding it against you when something suddenly comes up. For my wife and I, we didn't have like lunches or dinners or things like that. Church time, we would try to go to make sure that we had time to go to church together. I'd say that was probably it. And then when I was home, to try and focus on her and the kids. But for me, that worked, and I couldn't do it without her, and I couldn't have done it without her. We have grandkids now, and so it's just sort of funny. My wife will babysit them, and I'll come home, and the granddaughters will be there, and my wife will be pulling out her hair because they've been being silly, and I'm like, oh, they're so cute. Oh, they're just amazing. She'll be, this is just how you were with our girls. You wouldn't see them for a while, and you'd come home and everything they did was cute to you and funny. It's not always cute and it's not always funny, but we find a way to work well together.
So I kind of just want to tweak this one a little bit. As the head football coach or the dean or the head of guidance or the principal, obviously, you have natural leadership qualities within you. But maybe what are one or two or three, qualities you feel make an effective school leader? And then, personally, why do you think these leadership roles were important to you?
I think you got to figure out and ask yourself why you're doing something. And for me, to figure out the why was to do what's best for students, to do what I thought that I could do what was best for our athletes. And I think when you do that and you do what's best for students and you understand what your why is, that kind of helps you to make the decisions. So for me, that meant that I needed to work on my collaboration and my listening. Definitely in just about every meeting I've been in, I am not the smartest person in the room. And I like to go into that thinking that way so that I can always look to get better and learn from other people. I think as a leader, you should look to help other people. And like I said before, the most important thing that happens in a school, as much as I'd like to say it's football, it's teaching and learning. And that's the part of it that we try to make every decision to make sure that happens. So if it was a football kid who needed to get tutoring, okay, we need to make sure that those types of things are happening. And as a principal, I need to make sure that we have systems in place to help kids and to do what's best for kids.
So I wanted to follow a little bit of that. You said teaching and learning, and obviously that, you know, people think automatically the academic side, but it also, you know, even more today, I think involves the social and emotional side. So when you're coaching or your principal role or counselor role, how did you kind of help your athletes, your students develop that aspect too? Because right, that's a big part of going out into the community and serving your community and being a good member of society.
Well, I think we tried to make the football team like a family, so that there was that supportive aspect there for them. We tried to do things and to have activities that would bring them closer together as a team. In my roles when I was a dean or as a counselor, I would be aware of a lot of the different things that were going on throughout the school. So I had kind of an advantage because I would know if my football players were involved with those things or if my football players needed the support for those things. So it was kind of a great position for me to be in, because the social emotional aspect of it, you hear, you're a football guy, you shouldn't have those things, but football players, athletes in general, are people. And we always wanted to make sure that they were supported, social, emotionally, academically, all the time. And that was an important aspect for us.
All right. So when you're a principal, a head coach, a dean, I think all of us, you know, you quickly realize that you can't do it all by yourself, right? It's not possible. If you try to do it, you're not going to be in the position very long because you can't sustain it. So when it came to, you know, when it comes to delegating to your assistant principals or your assistant coaches or your admin team, um, how did you kind of know, you know, feeling the room, which person to delegate this task to or delegate this task to, you know, going about process of figuring out, you know, kind of, hey, they're really good at these things. This is something that they can do to help you, but help the whole school as well.
Sure. I think you go into it trusting that a person that's in the position they are in that position because they have the skills and the qualities necessary to be successful at that position. So as principal, it was really kind of cut and dried for me, as far as I had a director of activities and athletics. I have a director of curriculum. I have an assistant principal for security. I have department chairs for each of the departments, and you end up trusting that they are going to do their job. And when you bring new people into those positions, you want to make sure that they get the training and the support in order to do the job the way that you want. So for me, one of the things that changed was I had a lot of holdovers from the previous principal, and they knew me in my role as director of guidance or my role as head football coach, but they didn't really know how I was as a leader because I hadn't really coached with a lot of them. So it's to make sure that they understand what your expectations are, and to make sure that they understand that if there's something they are struggling with, or if they don't understand it, that it's okay to come to me and we'll figure it out together, and I'll provide the support necessary for you to be able to do your job, and to don't just sit back there and think that everything needs to be perfect, or that I expect them to be perfect, because I don't expect myself to be perfect. And that takes trust. That takes a lot of time for somebody to be able to share their weakness. That might not be the right word, but to share with their boss that, oh, I didn't really do that very well. And for the football coaches, I was able to get to that point pretty quickly with those guys. I had a very close relationship, so that was a much easier thing for me. It takes time when you're working in a school system to make sure that you get the trust from the people. And what I have is I have amazing people that I work with, and they are always doing the job to the best of their ability. And when there's something that comes up, I pick their brains. If they have something that comes up, they pick my brain, and we work together. And the premise is we want to do what's best for kids.
So as we kind of transition into our last two segments, the first one we call 30-second timeout. It's your opportunity to talk to our listeners, our audience, about anything that you would like. It could be about your family, your program, keys to your success, something you want our listeners to know about. It could be an opportunity for you to turn the tables on Todd and I and ask us a question. Whatever you would like, the floor is yours.
Well, I was originally, when you had sent me this, I was thinking I would talk about the importance of the support system at home, but I hit that on it. I think I hit that one. So my question for you guys, what do you think is the most important thing for a school leader? What are the most important qualities that you see for a school leader?
Go ahead, Jon. You can tackle that one first.
So I'm going to tackle this from two sides. I'm going to say, one, they need to be a listener, but not just a listener, but somebody that actually hears you and sometimes follows through on your ideas. I think sometimes leaders will say, oh yeah, I heard them, but then you never actually see the leader take anyone else's ideas. So then people start to wonder, well, is he really hearing, or is she really hearing, or are they just kind of taking it as token and like, this is what it is. In my role in my school, I'm the school behavior specialist, and I work with all 11 teams of teachers. And something that I vowed when I took this position many years ago was I never wanted to go into a meeting where I felt like the teachers would come to me for advice or suggestions. I would kind of play it off, walk out, and then the teachers would say, well, that wasn't helpful. He didn't give us anything. So I always wanted to be able to also offer a solution. Necessarily, was it the greatest solution always? No, but I also wanted to be solution oriented. And then the final one, and I think you hit on it as a leader, is just to be humble enough to know what you don't know. I think as a head coach myself, I have gotten much better over the years at realizing what I'm not good at, what I'm not passionate about, and finding the people around me that are passionate about those things. So I would definitely say being a listener that takes people's ideas, being solution oriented, and just ensuring the people around me feel a sense of ownership by giving them tasks that they can fulfill their passion in their role.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think principals, head coaches, leadership positions have a really tough job because, like you said, you're trying to find the best for the kids, but like as a principal, you also have to, what's best for our teachers, what's best for our community, and so I think like the trying to find within means and with capabilities, right? Nobody has unlimited money or limited resources, but support, all we can get for support for whatever it is, teachers, counselors, deans, parents, trying to find it that way, to build those relationships and kind of try to find a little bit of common ground to work together, right? Because a lot of times I feel like it ends up being separate. We got the parents over here, we got the coaches over here, sometimes the administration's over here, the supers and all that. I think that's really important, and ultimately it comes down to what you said, what's best for the kids, because that's the ultimate goal in the school. But at the same time, teachers have needs, deans have needs. Jon and I work in Melrose Park and Bellwood, and our parents have specific needs at times, that we try to help them out with, whether it be any number of things. We won't go into details, but I think whenever you see a good leader, it's trying to take all those things into account. It's a hard job, but whatever they can provide for those people as much as they can to show that, hey, we're all on the same page and we're pulling on the same side of the rope.
For sure. And and what you both of you guys say, I appreciate that. I really believe that what's best for kids is going to be having teachers that feel supported and teachers that are able to do their jobs and to do that. When I first became principal, the former principal said, "Hey, Eric, basically your job is to take care of the adults in the building, and the adults will take care of the kids." Mm-hmm. And that's something that because the focus I say is it's always on the kids. But if you have happy adults working with the kids are going to do better, because kids don't need perfect teacher. They don't need a perfect counselor. They don't need a perfect principal. But I think I agree with you. They need to have an adult that comes to work happy and enjoys what they're doing. And that's going to rub off on the kids. And the kids are going to have a better experience as well. So I appreciate what both of you guys said, because I agree with you.
All right, so this is where we get kind of goofy, we get fun. Quick hitters. Just some questions. Could be about football, could be about principal, could be about just life in general, your favorite things. A secret place to go in Lemont, like could be food, could be a park, could be whatever it be, something that somebody doesn't know about, but it's a really good place, really, really fun. Somewhere to go.
So for me, it's the quarries in Lemont. We have
really
quarries. Cool. They're beautiful. My wife and I, we go down there throughout the summer, and then on the weekends, and we walk. It's a nice 4-mile path, and it's beautiful. It's quiet, and not a lot of people go there.
All right. So you're obviously a major leader, but who's somebody you go to for guidance?
So two things, two people. If it's school related stuff, our superintendent, Dr. Mary Tickner, she's a tremendous leader with a wealth of experience. I pick her brain as often as I possibly can. And then when it comes to personal things, or if there's something that's not going well or things like that, it's my wife. That would be the person that I get my advice from. She's a great listener and a great partner.
I think that's good advice for any coach, right? Listen, go talk to your wife. They usually probably know better than you do at times, right?
Mm-hmm. For a lot of times.
Yeah. Your favorite quote?
It's probably the golden rule. Treat others like you want to be treated, and I try and do that. It's something that I fall short of at times, but I think if you treat people the way that you would like to be treated, and you go into those conversations, and that might be a bit contentious, I think that always helps.
The hardest thing you feel about being a leader?
I mean, there's a couple of them. Probably the one for me is knowing that you have to make decisions that will potentially negatively affect people that you care about. You need to remind. For me, it's always doing what's best for the district, and sometimes doing what's best for the district means that I'm going to have to correct a mistake that somebody has made, or I'm going to have to deal with the situation. And for me, I like the people I work with, so that becomes a difficult thing.
Yeah, that could be a whole long conversation topic as well. That's a great topic as well. Cake or pie?
Well, cake. Does anybody ever say pie?
I've had a couple say pie, but
I'm messing with you. Look at me. I like both, but cake more than the others.
What kind of cake? Is there a specific kind of cake you're going
I mean, there is the birthday cake. My dad's from Germany, so there were definitely some Black Forest cake that is one of my favorites that my wife makes me on my birthday. Those types of things.
Awesome.
Well, now I want cake.
Yeah, we have to go to the bakery.
Yeah. Okay. So for you, at someday after you retire, what's a dream post-retirement?
Yeah, it'll be different. It'll be different for me to retire. So that's going to be interesting. But my wife and I are talking about traveling, doing more traveling. We enjoy traveling, and get to spend more time with her and my 3 daughters and their families. So that's an exciting time for me. And I like going to sporting events and watching sporting events. So I imagine I'll be able to do that as well.
Any specific place you want to travel to?
Well, we're talking about, my wife would like to go to Greece.
Awesome.
We're looking to places in Europe that we haven't been, London or Paris. But with all the stuff that's going on in the world, I always say to her, can we just like go to a place like in the United States that we haven't been to yet?
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
Don't have to worry about something too crazy going on. But I guess crazy can happen anywhere.
Okay, the last one here. Best football coach before 2000. Let's think about back in that.
Great. And here it is. It's potentially one of the worst decisions I've made in my life, and that is I'm a Bears fan. Bears fan through and through. So I would have to say, if you're telling me who are the best coaches, I would say George Halas and Mike Ditka. And doggone it, at some point in time, the Bears are going to be back. I just hope it's in my lifetime.
Well, I'm a season ticket holder, so I hope that's sooner rather than later.
All right, there you go. I like to hear that.
Well, Coach, we can't thank you so much for the unique perspective from all your roles. So much good stuff that I know our listeners will enjoy. We appreciate you taking the time this morning to talk with us. We loved it.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast in partnership with the IBCA. Please be sure to rate us on whatever platform you are listening and give us a 5-star rating. For more show content and updates, please follow us on Twitter at After the Timeout. As always, thank you for listening. Tune in next time for more content on the court, off the court, and anything in between.